Today we will be discussing return goods orders. Return goods orders are used in order to return items to the vendors whenever we need to send those back. Inside of our inventory section here, there are going to be two main places we're going to be handling our returns from. First, we have our return goods order section, which is going to be used in order to actually create the order and send the item back to the vendor. The second is going to be the RGO holding bin. The RGO holding bin is a very important section here because it will show all of the items that are waiting for an action from the user. Items showing up in the RGO holding bin are not going to show up as part of your normal inventory elsewhere in the program. So if you look an item up and it says that you have 10 on stock and you have 3 items in your RGO bin, you actually have about 13 items at your location. However, 3 of those are going to be on this list and therefore do not show up with your normal inventory. An item can be added to the RGO bin from a few different sections. First of all, from the RGO bin here, we can choose to add an item to the bin. This is going to be used if you have an item on your shelf and it gets damaged. For whatever reason, you decide that you're going to be able to send this item back to the vendor, or you may want to say that we want to remove this item from our inventory. You can do that right from here by opening up the RGO bin and choosing Add Item to Bin. Then you can look your part up either by typing in the part number or by typing in, by choosing Inventory in order to do a complete inventory lookup. Once we've added our part, we'll say how many total items need to be added to the RGO bin. We can pick our return reason here, which your return reason is going to be set up uniquely for your company. Inside of the company setup section, there is a spot in order to set this up. If you do not see a reason on here that fits, you may want to talk to a manager in order to see if that reason can get added through the company setup section. Once the item's been added to the RGO bin, it will now show up in our list here of all of the items in the RGO bin. The second way an item is going to be added to the RGO bin is whenever you do a refund for a product inside of point of sale. When you do a refund, at the end of that refund, you get a pop-up message that says the reason for the refund. So you'll have the ability to choose, based on the customer, why this item is being refunded here. If you choose to send that item directly to the holding bin, it will send it to this list here. It's a really good idea to set up your return to holding bin as your default option, once again inside of company setup, for all of your refunds from your customers. That way, as a customer refunds a product, it will send it to the RGO bin. You can actually take that product, place it off to the side here, and then whenever you have some free time during the day and you want to handle all of those products that have been returned from your customers, decide what to do with them, you'll be able to get a list of those from this section here and match it up with the items that you have put aside from your refunds. The final way that we can add an item to the RGO bin is going to be from either the receiving or the warehouse transfers sections in the program. On both of those, during the receiving section after you've done a purchase order, or in the receiving section of the warehouse transfer section, there is the ability to send an item directly to the RGO bin if it was damaged in the process of actually transporting that item. So any items that were sent here now, you have the ability to take care of them from this section and decide what to do with them. Okay, we have a lot of items in our list right now here. So let's assume that we are now in a position that we can start making some decisions for what to do with these items. Once you come into this screen here, you can select which items that you want to make your decision for. And as you select each item, it's going to get added to the bottom list. So if we need to scroll up here at the top and select some more items, we're easily able to see all the items selected on the bottom list here. Now, from the bottom list, we have a few different actions. The first one is to take an inventory loss. Taking an inventory loss will basically remove this item completely from your inventory and basically allow you to scrap that item. This is very similar to just doing a physical inventory where you're reducing the quantity of the item that you have in stock. The next option is going to be return to inventory. This is going to be used if a customer refunds a product to you and you put it off to the side saying we'll determine what to do with this product later, and you find out there's nothing wrong with that product. We can now sell that to another customer, so we can highlight it on this list and choose to return this right to our inventory. The final option we have here is to create the return goods order. What this will do is open up the section that is very similar to a purchase order, but is going to be used in order to track all of our RGOs being sent back to the vendor. Clicking this button here, we'll see that it does take us to our RGO screen, and this is first our shipping information. So very similar to our purchase orders, we do need to put in a subject here first. Then we can select which location is our billing address and our shipping address. If we want to drop ship the item back to the customer here, so let's say we're returning an item and we want to get an item replaced, then we're saying where's that item that the vendor is sending back to us, where is it going here at this point? So I'm going to say that it's going to come back to our store here. Then we have to select our vendor here that we're going to be dealing with. And we can put in who our contact that we spoke with was and say when we sent our RMA. Your RMA is going to be your Return Merchandise Authorization form. You are going to fill out this form and send it to the vendor. Once the vendor receives that form for a request for a return to be done, they are going to send you back an authorization number to say that, yes, you can send us back that item, and we will take the appropriate action with it. Below here, we'll see that we have the ability to say the date that the RMA was sent, the date the RMA was received, and actually a spot to put in an RMA number. You may leave the contact RMA sent and RMA received blank. However, the RMA number will need to be filled out before you can actually send this item back to the vendor. For now, I'm going to leave this blank because let's assume we have not sent our RMA yet, and we haven't therefore got the response. So we'll come back to this, and we'll be able to fill this out later on as well. On the right column here, we do have our vendor information saying who we are shipping this item to, and it has all of your information for the vendor. Once we choose Continue, all of the products that we have selected from the RGO bin are showing up on this order, and we have the ability now to add more products if we need to. There's two ways that we're going to be adding products. The first way is going to be the most common way, which you can select Holding Bin from the top of the screen here, and you can grab items from the holding bin, which is the RGO bin we were just looking at, and you can add them onto this order. The second way is that you can just start typing in a part number down here at the bottom, and you can add items from inventory directly onto the return goods order here. We've already added our items from the RGO bin, so let's assume that all of these items are correct, and all we need to do is choose Save and Quit. Once I chose Save and Quit here, I'll notice that I did get a message warning me that some of these items are missing a return reason. If I double-click on an item, I will get the details about this actual item here. So for each one of these items, there is some additional information we have to fill out here. If I look through this information, first we have a return reason, which is going to come directly from when we put this into the holding bin. We now have our return terms. The return terms is something we need to fill out for each one of these items. This is going to tell us what we are actually doing with the item. The first option here is a return for a credit. This is going to have us send the item back to the vendor, and the vendor is going to send us a credit. When we choose return for credit, what will happen is when we complete our original RGO, it will take the item out of the RGO bin or take it out of inventory, and it's going to push that return over to AP costing. That will allow us to track the credit and send the credit to QuickBooks later on. Our second option here is a return for replacement. This will take the item out of our inventory, send it back to the vendor. However, instead of sending it straight to AP costing, it's actually going to put it back into receiving for us because we are expecting to receive some product to replace the product that we have sent to the vendor. Our third option here is going to be scrap for replacement, which, as far as the program is concerned, it's going to be handled very similar to return for replacement. The product will be removed from your inventory, and then it's going to go over to receiving so you can receive the replacement. We have scrap for credit, which is very similar to return for credit. Whereas we remove the item from inventory, we're not sending it back to the vendor. We're simply going to destroy the item on location here, but the vendor is going to send us a credit. We also have the option to exchange with the vendor here. This is going to be very similar to return for replacement, where we are exchanging this for a different product. So what will happen for exchange with vendor is that we will remove this item from our inventory, and then it's going to go to receiving so we can receive the appropriate product that the vendor has sent back to us. I'm going to choose that this is a return for replacement, and then I have the option to put in any vendor memos. I also have down here an original purchase order field where I can put in the original purchase order number so that I can complete this return. The original purchase order number is going to be the original purchase order that the vendor sent to me here. I can either put in I can type in my own purchase order number, or I can click this button for Find Purchase Order Number, and this will bring up a list of all of the purchases I've previously done in the system. This gives me a good opportunity to look at the purchases that I've done for this product and determine which order this is going to come from. So if I select that this was one of the items that was sold based on our order from last year, I can highlight that, choose Select, and now it fills out my original purchase order number for me. When it does this as well, it automatically fills in the cost of the return here based on the original purchase order number. The items per case, number of cases and total items is going to be the number of items that I am returning to the vendor. Once I've completed this here, I can choose Continue, and I can move on to my next item and do the same thing here. And for each one of our items, we do have the option to select a different return term, original PO number, and obviously cost and quantity. So I'm going to go through here, and I'll make this one a return for credit, so this goes straight to AP costing. I can put in my original purchase order number based on my purchase orders that I've done, and everything else is accurate here. So I'll go through the rest of these, fill these out, and finish up my return here. Okay, now that I filled out all of my products here, I'm going to try to choose Save and Quit again. And this time we'll see that it does allow me to actually save that and move on. Once it's saved it, it's now showing up on my existing RGO list, which, if you're familiar with purchase orders, this screen is very similar to your existing purchase order screen. Now, we entered this section here from our RGO bin, so if I choose Quit to quit out of here, we'll see it sends us back to the RGO bin, and now I can go and handle the rest of my products. I may see that there are some items on here that we need to go ahead and scrap at our location. So I can highlight those, choose to take the inventory loss, and remove those from the RGO bin. There are also some items on here that are not defective at all, and we can resell back to our customers. So I can highlight those items and choose to return them to inventory. When you return these items to the inventory, it will return them to the inventory, to the warehouse that they originally came out of. I'm going to quit out of the RGO bin, and I'm going to jump over to the Return Goods Orders section. When we go into this section here, we'll see our existing RGOs. Once again, from the RGO bin, there is a shortcut to get to this section here. So you will find yourself using a lot of these shortcuts here, saving a lot of time jumping between these screens. Now from here, I'm going to see the order that I had just created. If I try to send this order right now, I am going to get a message here saying that I do not have an RMA number assigned to this order yet. I mentioned this a little bit earlier here, but what I can do is I can highlight this order, choose to modify it, go to my shipping information, and now I can fill out my RMA number. So this does need to be filled out before I can send back any of my returns. And let's say that we did get an RMA number here from the vendor that allows us to send these items back, and I'll just fill out that number and choose to save this. Now I'll highlight this order again, send my RGO, and now at this point here, the system is going to go through, take those items out of your RGO bin or out of inventory, depending on how you've added them to the return goods order, and then it's going to move them to the appropriate spot. It's either going to move some of this order to receiving or straight to AP costing. So now, once I've done this part of the order, I can quit out of here, and just like how we have our procedure with our purchase orders, where we first purchase, then we receive, then we AP cost, with return goods orders, I can do the same thing here. So now I can go to my receiving, and I can see my return goods order that I had just done here. I can choose to receive it. And all of the products that I chose to replace or to exchange are going to show up on here. And simply, just like receiving, I can say how many of these products I have actually received. Let's assume the vendor did a good job here, and they sent us back all of the items that we asked for. I'm going to continue. Because the vendor sent these items back to us, these items now go back into our inventory because we are completing our receiving. And now these 3 items, along with the rest of the items on the order, are going to be over in AP costing so that we can compare our vendor's invoice and the credits that we got from our vendor to what we originally thought it was going to be. Okay, so now in AP costing here, once again, I can pull up this order. And I have all of my items on this order here. I can put in my invoice number, and then I can go through each one of these, treating this just like a normal AP costing order. I'll just say invoice correct, save this, and this will continue on. Now, when we look in here in AP costing, this order is actually going to be split up here between 2 separate orders. We have all of the items that were returned for credit on one invoice, and then all of the items that were actually received on another invoice. So we just handled the items that were received. What I'm going to do next here is I'm going to look at the items that were sent directly to a credit, and we'll see how we handle those in AP costing here. Okay, so we see now here that we have another order still waiting to cost check. And if I go into cost check this order, the only difference here that we're going to see now is that these items here have a total item received of a negative number. that is going to make my final cost of these items here a negative number. So we'll see here that we can go in, we can add these items on here, and we can add these on here as a negative, and that does not affect our order at all here. Even if I choose invoice correct, how we typically do this here, we'll see that the items will show up with the correct cost, and this will show up with a credit on here as well, so that when we actually go ahead and save this and we send this over to QuickBooks, it will go over to our accounting software as a credit instead of as an invoice that we owe our vendors. So handle all of your credits the same way here, and we'll be able to track those in our accounting software for our next orders that we do. The return goods section here, this is really all designed so that if you are familiar with your original purchase orders, receiving an AP costing, you will quickly be able to pick up how to do a return goods order and how to handle that through the system. That completes our demo here for the return goods order section. If you do have any questions, you can give us a call or check our online resources for written tutorials as well. Have a good one.